Welcome back to another episode of Competitive Edge here on the Esportsbet.io YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe. We do these every week. FaceCheck is back now. Lots of fun content. Thorin's got his own predictions on this channel as well. And we will have more Comp Edge for CSGO coming up in the future once the player break ends. So
I will say, to be fair, I do like, it's been proven, I do consistently win in League of Legends and CSGO. You can go check the account, how much I've got there, how many bets. But I will say, I think the last video I did on this channel, it was the outright odds one, and I did bet on Vitality to win the split. So I'm not always right. These are just guides. These are just tendencies. Things are going for here, guys.
At least you didn't lose harder the further away they were from first place.
And also, my suffering's over. Like, it'd be way worse if they got to the final and they lost Monty. Then I'd still get nothing. This way,
you've already lost.
I can just enjoy the split now. It's great.
We've been doing really well.
To be fair, as bad as that is, that was before the split, Monty. What I've learned about betting is this. Some of the things Kassad told me as a kid, he always said you always wait for the ones that are the right odds. You don't just do like the impulse one for no reason. So one thing I will say is I never bet on any Vitality games because after the first week I was like, I can't trust this. So one thing I have learned is when it's actually you have to really put a bet on, it's very different from what you might say on a talk show. Like on a talk show, I made some upset. I can just say he's going to win every game, can't I? But when I actually have to like really be tested, something inside me knows like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe we hold back on this one.
That's why we don't place predictions on the LPL on this show.
Yes, exactly.
We will on LPL playoffs, to be fair, but LPL regular season's too nutty. But we have had a couple really good weeks. So hilariously, in our first week of the split, we did really bad. We picked basically all the favorites.
LCS ruined us basically.
Yeah, we picked all of the favorites and we lost every single prediction we made. But last week we got all of them right, except for one, which was a flyer we put on D+ Kia over T1, which we put a small amount on just because the odds were good.
It was big odds.
And guess what, Thorin? We got all but one right again this week. And you know what? It was the D+. Oh, this week was the D+ flyer over T1. Last one, it was the D+ flyer over Genji. So we've been taking some D+ flyers because they've been at over 3, basically 3.0 odds or greater. And so we had some fun with that. So we took another flyer this week. Didn't work out, but let's take a look on what did work out because I think we were up like 900 this week overall. We picked Fnatic over BDS. That one turned out to be a little bit hairy. But Fnatic ended up winning that. So they were at 1.5. We took Cloud9 very intelligently over EG because we said, if you can get Cloud9 at 1.6 odds, even if they're against the second best team in the league. And guess what? That was like, an 18-minute game? It was a complete stomp.
They were clearly better. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our read was right on that one.
Complete stomp. It looked like they were playing with a vengeance after losing to Liquid. D+ lost to T1, but we took a flyer with 200 USDT at 3.2 odds. Then, Thorin, we correctly predicted the FlyQuest bounce back. Not only their win over Immortals, but also Energy. Plus, we put a parlay on them winning both of them, and the parlay was over.
So we got all three, right?
Yeah, we got all three with that one. So that was a lot in total. That was like 700 or so. And then we also picked D+ over Hanwha Life because remember we said if you can get D+ at 1.757, and we talked about Clid's issues. Turned out that when we recorded that show, that was before they announced the Grizzly substitute. So that one ends up being very good as well. That's why you kind of have to, you can get good odds if you rush on over and take advantage of outside of game information that is public, right? For example, now we know that Faker has an arm injury. So maybe we're thinking about that one. And it does bring up the fact that, as you guys know, we're doing a new promotion with Esportsbet, and that is our match of the week. Match of the week was C9 versus EG last week. This week, it's Genji versus T1. Well, why is that? It's because we always get good odds when T1's involved because the T1 fans, they drive those odds towards T1 so you can get some good value. That's how we got KT at 2.8. In the telecom war 2 weeks ago and got the big money on KT. Odds are more reasonable, as you can see below for this one. But why we select the last Free Nation match of the week is if you sign up with our referral code below, your first wager on that match, if you win, you can get an extra 10% profit up to 100 USDT or its equivalent in another cryptocurrency or DJT. So you can also get the bonus if you're playing for free, which is nice. So again, you have to use our referral code. You can only it's your first bet on that match, but you do get some really good incentives. And if you're starting to play on Esportsbet, remember, you can still get either a 50% deposit bonus up to $100 or a risk-free $100 first bet on the platform. So obviously combined with our match of the week, potential for some good money, and you can also just avoid losing anything. If you lose your wager, just go talk to the people on the Discord for Esportsbet, and they will refund it to your account. So there you go. Now let's talk about the matches for this week, starting off with some delightful LCS competition. It's Cloud9 versus Golden Guardians, very similar to the EG match in terms of odds from last week, 1.554 for Cloud9. Now, we saw what happened. When Cloud9 went against EG. I think they got a little bit sloppy. They had some bot lane oopsies against Team Liquid, but they cleaned that up really fast, dominated Evil Geniuses. I'm anticipating the same thing here. Your thoughts on the match, Thorin?
I mean, to me, Golden Guardians actually overperformed at MSI, even though they didn't make like a significant run. Like they actually were in some of those games. They actually looked way better than you'd expect. So to me, I think people have actually done that thing where an underdog makes the final of LCS. Then in their brain, they go, right, they're an elite team. And it's like, sort of, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, there's a reason why it's Golden Guardians. Like it's not a bad rostered team in terms of like what the money probably is, but it's not actually a team as good as Cloud9, guys. Come on, like I mean, they lost to NRG the other week, like a team that's actually had a lot of troubles this split. So I think this is an easy one to take again, especially with those odds. Like if we could get that sort of odds for Cloud9, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, Cloud9 just looks definitively the best. And again, you can look at their loss.
It might even be the best Western team, mate. They're actually just like at this point in time, it's them and G2, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, Fnatic, I think, there's some arguments for.
We'll see when they get to the playoffs.
We'll see. But yeah, as far as Cloud9 goes, again, looking at Team Liquid, if that bot lane disaster doesn't occur, then I think obviously that game would be much closer. It's just really, really hard to come back from that position. But I just don't anticipate that same stuff is going to occur versus Golden Guardians. And when they're on even footing, like we saw with EG, they can just completely overpower their opponents. Berserker is still in the MVP race for LCS, might even be a leading candidate. Probably him and Jojo Pion are way up there at the current point in time. So yeah, I mean, you feel really good at this. We got C9 at 1.6 odds last week. We're almost at 1.6, 1.542 right now. So we'll put 500 on to Cloud9 to kick things off. Feeling pretty comfortable about that prediction. So the next one is another LCS match. EG against Dignitas. And while I do believe EG is going to win this game, Dignitas has been better than you might have expected so far this
When I saw these odds, I knew you were going for the Dignitas underdog because one, even though EG's in the same status actually as I just said about Golden Guardians, just because they've been up there at the top of the table, mainly because they feasted off all those bigger rosters failing, everyone's overrating them. Like when this all shakes out, here's my prediction, they will be like the fourth best team in the playoffs. There you go. Because that's the problem. When you look at the Dignitas odds, those odds are monster for a BO1. And as you say, Dignitas actually starting to look all right. They're pulling these upsets out. Like, this is a great odds pick, I think.
I mean, yeah, they lost to 100 Thieves, but in the past 2 weeks, they started a little bit slow. They did lose to Golden Guardians, but they beat Team Liquid, they beat FlyQuest, and they're coming off 2 wins versus TSM and NRG. And here's the thing about Dignitas, is that
those are some legit wins.
Yeah, Tomo's actually performing in this meta. Now, like, you can make an argument Jensen and Santorin are underperforming, but Rich also is like a fringe MVP
He's actually pretty
candidate.
Good, mate. Yeah,
he's legitimately I don't think he's a
got
front
some good
runner.
picks too.
I don't think he's a front runner, but Rich, Rich has been getting a lot of really powerful champions. He's been able to get Cassante a lot during these drafts. And so I believe that it's possible that Dignitas continues to power up here as we go into the rest of summer. And they're an over 500 team. Yeah, Diamond has struggled a little bit, but it's not like we've seen a world beater bot lane from Evil Geniuses. Ayla is probably about the same skill level as Diamond right now. So they can't really even strike at Dignitas's weaknesses. Meanwhile, Jensen has been okay, like good enough, and I don't think he's going to get dumpstered by Jojo Pion. And Rich has the opportunity to carry some of these games. So I don't think they're going to win. I think EG is the better team. But when you have 2.8 odds,
yeah,
for
we're
Dignitas,
priced in on this one. Absolutely.
It's like the chance for the upset is there. It's just a little too juicy.
By the way, in case someone's just a casual and they're not familiar with betting, essentially what you want to do in the long run, this is why you have a bankroll and you don't, like Monty, if you notice, isn't just putting like 1,000 every match. I mean, he's not certain other people in other regions. The reason he's doing smaller amounts is because that way we can do loads of bets, massive sample size. And then essentially, if we keep taking these where the odds are way higher than they should be, in the long run, we will win.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually matter even if we lose most of them because of the ones that we win, we'll be getting 2.8, 3, etc.
Right. Right. And it just gives you a buffer. So I'm only going to put 200 on this one because I put 500 on Cloud9. So it's about, a little less than half a unit.
Yeah, that's the usual approach, yeah.
And so because the odds are super good, we will return, more than double. It's at 2.8 odds right now. If it does go through and Dignitas wins, and we'll feel happy with ourselves if that's the case.
I also feel like as well, I'll just throw this out there, because EG did just start a bit too well, and there was obviously some big name rosters really failed the first week or two. I also think they're just due to level off a little bit. They're due to drop a few more. Like they're 7-2 now. Does anyone really have them just winning going 14-4 or something? It's not happening, is it? Let's be realistic. They're going to drop a few games, so there's going to be. And also, this is even one of the ones where it's not a team you're super gunning for on the schedule. Like this is easily one that could turn up, get a draft if, like you say, Rich just carries a game on a carry top champion or something.
Yeah, he's been really good. I mean, he's been arguably the best top laner within LCS so far this split, which is surprising to say, given the end of his performance in LPL. But he also had some good performances in his early part of LPL as well as in LCK. So maybe it was just a blip.
A play. To me, it's just weird. I just don't know how he appeared here at LCS, but whatever. It's cool. I guess someone like Tots.
Well, they spent all those years trying to get Faker to the LCS, and Heroes of the Storm was like, we have Faker at home, and so they sent that Faker to North America.
Exactly. Exactly, the Faker of Hots. There you go.
We heard you wanted a Faker. Can you have the Faker of Hots, please? He's here. He's here to dominate. The next one is our match of the week. We talked about this earlier. Gen G, look, should they be a team that is going undefeated in the first round robin? Maybe not. Should they have lost in the first matchup they had against T1? I would argue they should have lost that series, but they did win it in the end. It wasn't pretty. I think T1 was the better team in spite of losing the series. But Gen G remains undefeated in the LCK. They have been able to pull out wins, maybe illegally versus KT a little bit. And they did face KT and T1 on 13-10. So we're a couple patches later now where obviously the Azir has been buffed up and the meta's changed pretty significantly because they're on 13-12 at the moment. So that's something to take into consideration as well. But Gen G, in spite of Doran maybe dying stupidly in lane at times, has been quite good at team fighting. Chovy is still Chovy. Peanut's back on the Poppy now, which warms the cockles of my heart. And we've seen Paze continue to just be crazy good. I mean, Paze is now an MVP candidate. For this split. That's pretty legit. I think he's behind Keen still, but in the conversation, that's for sure. Whereas T1, they've been floundering. We know Faker potentially has an arm injury now.
Their record is fraudulent, I'm telling you. Because the problem is, essentially, the two best teams far and away is KT and Gen G. Now, obviously, it depends at what style of League of Legends. I think it's probably KT. I'm with you from last week.
It's KT.
They're probably the real best team right now. But after them, it's Gen G. T1, as usual, is holding position. They're still near the top. But, mate, they even look dodgy against Nongshim. And that story about the idea Faker's got a busted hand, bro, that's everything I need. That's almost bait to make me want to bet this game. Because as you say, then finally, the cherry on top is there's no way we should be getting Gen G for these odds. But as you say, the T1 fans can't help themselves. Like a moth to the flame. They have just driven those odds down. I love it. I love it.
Thorin, I'm just sad that, T1 isn't the favorite here. Because that happens a lot of the times with T1.
Sometimes.
That's why it was 2.8 odds to KT. When KT was the better team going into the telecom war, just like Gen G is the better team going into this match, but maybe reality is coming home a little bit. We don't even know if Faker's going to play this week. It's possible that they shift up roles. It's possible that they put in one of their quite bad, apparently from people I've talked to, challenger mid laners. I think they would probably switch roles before they would put in a challenger mid laner and then put in a challenger AD carry. That's kind of the theory that's been going around based on the strength of, well, because T1's challenger team is very good.
She play mid.
Something like that.
I'd like to see it at least. That'd be fun. It'd be good for us as well.
Their reserve options are quite poor. And the problem with substituting Faker out isn't just that you're getting a different player with different hands and a different skill set. You're getting a different voice in the team. He and Keria are the main shot callers of this roster. So it's not just that you're losing his individual
the whole
abilities.
style goes.
Yeah, and he has a very particular style right now that's more supportive. So
I wouldn't even be surprised, dude, if you're right. Actually, I was thinking of it just because he isn't that great a mid laner anymore. You're right. Actually, if you take Faker out, actually most of the strength of T1 goes away. The style is the strength of the team at the moment.
Right. So I think it's real rough. So he, we don't know the severity of his injury. We don't know if he's going to be taking time off. I just don't see them beating Gen G in this best of 3. I think their best shot was in week 1 in the first round robin. It's not going to happen this time. And the other reason that T1 has been kind of bolstered is because there really aren't any other good teams in the league outside of the top 3. Outside of T1, Gen G, and KT, it's like, as you said, Thorn, the tiers are like KT, Gen G, next tier is T1, and the next tier is now super gimped Hanwha Life with a rookie jungler and like scuffed D plus Kia that you can never count on.
D plus is just suffering. It's just suffering at this point in time, isn't it, to watch them.
Well, sometimes. I mean, sometimes Canyon pops off and
no,
it's
but
really
you keep
fun.
watching. That's what I keep thinking all the time. But this is also the problem I've realized. If this was LCS, they'd be fine. But these are best of 3s, and they just can't keep it up, mate.
Yeah.
Like the amount of times I keep expecting them to make a run, like they should be in the T1 category, obviously.
Well, the thing about Canyon is for every pop-off game, he also has an int game, so it all balances out, and the rest of the team just isn't good enough at the current point in time. You know, they keep trying to like make Kana carry, but Kana carry is never going to be a thing. It's the more resources you put into Kana, he doesn't return them in any meaningful way and carry the game, so it's kind of a mess.
It's how you know their entire team for all those years was like their top player is they can't, you know what I mean? Give me a break. Like they just don't know how to play through ADC. I'm convinced of it at this point in time.
Yeah, and the rest of the league is just bad. The other 5 teams are just bad. So
it's not a great time for LCK. It's not.
No, it's not. Outside of a few in the top. So anyway, this is all to say that T1 has a good record, but a lot of that has been because of bad teams being in the league. And with Faker not feeling great, got to think that perhaps this might be a time where Gen G should have a pretty easy win. So we are going to go ahead and make that prediction. Gen G, just like Cloud9, feels pretty good. It's not KT, but we're not going to put 5,000. That'd be too much. 500 USDT onto Generation Gaming. All right, we're going to flip over to LEC now. This one's a little bit interesting because I still haven't made up my mind on this next one, Thorin, because the odds are just so, they're so good. So do you buy, this is the question, do you buy a Mad Lions team that is at 1.6, which you would feel pretty good about had you, if you were coming, like if you watched them last split and they had that mediocre split, then they came back and they just ran their way through the bracket, right? Ended up doing really well in the playoffs. And then, or do you take XL, who started 0-3 in LEC, but have gone 5-1 since and seem to have at least sort of found a stable style, even though you know that this XL roster probably doesn't have the ceiling of, you know, XL rosters from earlier this year. Peach has looked really shaky. You know, VTO at this point in time has a higher ceiling than Abadage does. But we've seen recently some of these matches go in XL's favor, right? We saw them beat Mad Lions in week 2 when Nisqy was playing the Twisted Fate and Abadage was playing the Azir. So it was pretty much, it was in the similar meta to what we're going to see. And Patrick was on the Draven. So do you buy that this is going to become an XL upset win based on these odds, or is Mad Lions going to do what they usually do and kind of pull it together for playoffs?
Point of clarification for anyone thinking previously of this is obviously best of 3s now. It's the groups now, guys. It's not BO1s. So it really is who's the better team. Now, here's the thing. I think that the coaching staff of Mad Lions is a very good coaching staff. Like, there's a best of 3 to series. I think they've already got better players. But the other thing is, on the Best Damn League show, which the episode by the time people watch this will probably be out. It'll be out tomorrow sometime, I'm guessing. CL from Heretics made a point that actually I hadn't thought of, because obviously Mad Lions won the first 4 games, then lost the last 5, right?
There are 5
but he made the
matches.
point that because they'd won the first 4, they were locked into groups. And he said, if you think about Mac, well, first of all, Mac's the guy who, like Peter Dunn, who always wants to find like breaks for players and give them like the mental health spirit. But also he said he thinks that once they were locked into groups, they basically just experimented in a bunch of the drafts and tried different things and stuff, which actually I can sort of see that. Like part of it's probably cope. I also think they did have some bad games and they definitely did sometimes. But essentially, I think
Nisqy might have been asleep during some of those games.
Yeah, the difference is, as you say, because XL started off at the deficit, they've been playing for their lives. Like some of them are playing for their careers right now. Remember, this is the last split. I mean, as someone pointed out, if you bombed out and you like didn't end up even getting to groups, you have like 6 months off for the rest of the year. So it's pretty dire for them. So the problem is, I feel like XL should fade. They should be a bit mid, I think. I do think Mad Lions is the better team.
Okay. Well, if we can get them at 1.6
and they've got jungle diff all day long.
That's true. That's true. The jungle diff is pretty intense. I will accept your argument.
That's pretty good odds for them if we think they're going to win.
Exactly. I'm not going to go as hard as we have on some of the other favorites, Because, like, honestly, I'm much more confident in C9 and Genji at 1.5 than I am at Mad at 1.6 against Excel. So we'll just go a little 300 on this one.
And I have to say as well, like, I do get why for this team, Abadagi has worked better than Vethio, but I'm with you. Vethio's a much better mid laner. Like, not only do you see that in Heretics, but mate, I think Abadagi was always a bit overrated. He was like good in NA because who was his competition? Like Takui, Busted Bjergsen, you know what I mean? That was a nightmare, that mid lane pool. Like, now he's back in Europe. He's mid. He's completely mid. He's not just a mid laner. He is a mid laner.
He was also key to some of those Schalke runs, but remember the Schalke runs were only necessary because they were so garbage earlier on, and they had some miracle streaks to make themselves relevant again, but it wasn't like they had a miracle streak to win the league. Right. They had a miracle streak to make playoffs. Right.
That was 3 years ago as well, by the way, guys. 3 years ago. You know what I really hear about that? It's actually just a pet peeve of mine. But you have to understand, Monty, from about 2014 onwards, I've just had people telling me, like, shut the fuck up about Froggen in season 2. And that was 2 years earlier. Then they're telling me, like, Reckless is a champion. It's like, that's 5 years ago. So, like, I can't, it's okay. Just calm it. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. Our final LEC match that we're going to select has very similar odds, but I think I'm going to take BDS on this one because Heretics is at 1.651, BDS is at 2.064, so the odds are a little bit closer together than Mad Lions and Excel. Now, the reason why I'm taking BDS is you might say to yourself, well, in week 2, Heretics won over BDS. That was when Aggressivo was in instead of Adam. Yep. And not having Adam really fucks with BDS's style. Okay, like it changes so much about how this roster and how this team wants to play because their style is basically predicated on Adam's champion pool and Adam drawing pressure into the top lane to free up Crowny to play hyperscaling champions without getting ganked, and also to get dragon control early on because the jungle is up on top side, so they can stack dragons and then fight you around dragons like at Soul Point and Soul. That's how they play.
I just appreciate that you did actually do. Essentially, the joke here is it's like the classic Moscow 5 joke that we have about Edward, right? Because you're right. That is in action. That is what happens, Monty. Adam's style, where he 24/7 pushes in the top with one of those carry top, it does absolutely draw pressure, draw the jungle ganks, mean that Crowny can operate. But I just don't think he's doing it like with, as you're saying, like for that reason. I think he would do that anyway in any game in solo queue. So the joke is, I also agree. That's another reason, by the way, why I actually think BDS is actually going to win this. And I think the odds, I think it's a coin flip this series. Because another thing you have to point out is, I might make fun of Adam, but he's placing Ebby, mate, who's one of the absolute worst top laners you have ever seen. So when you look across the positions, it's like, actually, why wouldn't BDS be able to win this? Like, it's totally plausible.
It's a good matchup.
Look, give Jankos some credit, but he's not a miracle worker. Like, Jankos and Vetio got to go ham in this series.
It's a good matchup. And I suppose, one of the arguments you could make for Heretics is that because there's going to be low pressure, potentially bot side in this game, like maybe you can get away with Yuumi, and Yuumi is the great VTO enabler. This was true of his MVP run. If Yuumi wasn't picked constantly by Misfits, VTO would not have won MVP, guys. That's how it was. So many of those comebacks were enabled by Yuumi on Akali. Okay, in the mid and late game. So you have to understand that, yeah, they've been picking Yuumi again recently because it's a fucking good idea, especially when, and also, to be fair, Heretics could have won that game versus G2 if they played out their composition properly this last week when they had VTO on the Kai'Sa mid and they had Flacket on a fed Zeri with Yuumi in the early game in the bot lane. They just sucked at playing out their win condition. But I agree, like the problem with Evie is when you're playing up against Adam, what happens with BDS is he takes Ghost and Flash and then he draws the pressure up top. They get early dragons. And then this is what compensates for the lack of teleport on Adam a lot of the time, is because come, 20 minutes into the game, they force you to group on Dragon while they're getting Soul Point or Soul. And so it doesn't matter if he doesn't have TP because you have to come there. So it allows him to kind of press more aggressively in lane, but it is the strategy is entirely predicated on early Dragons, because if you're down in Dragons and you don't have teleport come 20 minutes, that fucking sucks. That is a massive disadvantage. So yeah, I would say in this one, as much as I would like to believe that Heretics can pull this out, it's a duel.
They're not reliable enough, mate. It's like you said earlier. Here's another thing. One, they had no business even winning that Vitality game that they had. That was ridiculous. That was like a Vitality throw. In fact, I agree with you. They're bad at winning actually when they're in a winning position, mate. Like Heretics is just such a dodgy-ass team. So to me, I don't trust them. Fair. I don't trust them to win.
Especially in one of these scenarios. Like, I feel like you just ban the Yuumi, and then it's a battle of hyper carries, right? VTO versus Crown Shot, like late game carry investment. And if Crownshot gets a free laning phase, he can do pretty good stuff. He can do pretty
And
good
also,
stuff.
like I said earlier, when I meme on Adam, I mean versus like the actual good top laners. Like against Evie, he could just play like a Renekton or something. It's not like he's not able to do it. So it's also like not like he has to have Olaf every game or something. And by the way, because the best thing, you probably get it one game anyway. That's just how LEC works for some bizarre reason. That probably if Cassandra to Evie one game too. You know, who knows? Handshake on that one.
Well, Evie also ends on Cassandra, so it's not like he's a
Oh,
monster
true.
on that thing. I feel like you can let him have it.
He's like
just bait them into
single-handedly
it.
keeping the champion in the meta. Just keeping it balanced.
He's just rebalancing the win rate. I do love watching Heretics though, because honestly, it has become so entertaining to see if they can actually win with how badly Evie is playing and how they're able to do it. It is.
Oh, you know they're
quite
well
funny.
coached. They just have to be. They just have to be.
Well, I don't think we'll be seeing Evie next year, but yeah, I do
And
think.
by the way, Yankos, it's the joke that, you know, in his early part of his career, he was known as a choker. Mate,
Right.
he must have the most ironclad mental ever after the way this year's gone. Think about last split as well. He was just carrying all those. The guy's just a stud, mate. He just doesn't give up mentally. It's amazing.
All right, we'll put 250 onto BDS. As you say, I think this is much more of a coin flip. I think there are routes for Heretics to win, but just because we get pretty good odds on BDS,
Yeah, pretty good.
I think it's worth it. All right, that'll do it for Competitive Edge for this week. We'll be back next week, same time. Remember to subscribe here on the Esportsbet YouTube channel and check out next week for more tips. We've been doing really well recently. See you then.